In this lecture, I will be covering Chapter 63, Financial Management in the Dental Office. In this lecture, we'll list important patient financial information that you will need to get. We'll describe the fee presentation and making financial arrangements. I'll talk about accounts receivable and the types of accounts systems used and the components of these systems. I'll also describe how to enter and record payments. We'll look at how to prepare a bank statement and the monthly statement and types of billing options you might use. I'll describe the aging of accounts and collection of past due payments. Next, we'll look at accounts payable and what fixed and variable overhead is. We'll define disbursement, invoices, and statements, and look at several ways to organize expenditures. I'll also talk about the steps for writing and endorsing checks. Finally, we'll look at payroll and payroll deductions. I'll talk about the different types of dental insurance and how benefits are calculated and determined. We'll look at CDT codes and their purpose. And finally, we will look at filing insurance claims and how to process and track them. Business records are the foundation for the management of the financial transactions in the dental office. It is the responsibility of the business staff to ensure that all financial records are complete, accurate, and up to date. The first step in account management is the establishment of financial policies by the dentist and implemented by the business assistant. Fees will be paid in a timelier manner if the practice establishes financial guidelines. The financial policy should include statements on gathering financial information, presenting the fee, making financial arrangements with patients, and collecting overdue accounts. The registration form gathers the basic financial information needed to manage account history and complete patient identification for insurance claims processing. You will need the patient's name, address, telephone number, and place of employment of the guarantor. Remember, we've talked about what the guarantor is. You'll also need to get information about the patient's coverage under an insurance plan. This could include both medical and dental insurance. Here are the steps in fee presentation. First, you develop an estimate based on the treatment plan. You'll need to make 2 copies of the estimate, one for the patient and one for the office records. After the presentation, you may be asked to discuss the fees involved in the treatment with the patient. All financial agreements should be recorded on the account ledger. The patient will sign a contract for the agreed amount. A copy is provided to the patient and the original is retained with the office records. There are 2 terms that you need to know when talking about accounting. When we talk about accounting, we are talking about a process. This process records, classifies, and summarizes financial transactions. Bookkeeping is the way that we record, classify, and summarize all of the financial transactions. The business assistant is responsible for bookkeeping and should perform the duties on a daily basis. Accounts receivable activities are not difficult. However, in carrying out these activities, the business assistant assumes the responsibility of handling other people's money. He or she is responsible for making every effort to keep this money safe, to record it accurately, and to respect the confidence in which all of this information must be held. There are 2 types of accounts receivable systems, a pegboard system or a computerized system. The pegboard system is shown on the left. This is a manual system that uses a daily journal, ledger card, and receipt to manage each transaction. On the right is a computerized system. It is estimated that 75% of dental offices are using an electronic practice management system. I have not seen a pegboard system being used in the dental offices that I have visited. A computerized accounts receivable management system can automatically calculate many types of management reports. It is important to enter information accurately as this information is used to generate account totals and daily and monthly summaries. It's also very important that the information stored in the computerized system be backed up daily and additional copies of the backup be stored in a safe place outside the office. Computer viruses can destroy data, and having a backup will help ensure that nothing is lost if the data has to be recovered. Here is an example of a pegboard accounting system. It is also known as a one-write system. This is because you make a single entry for all records. This is done by positioning the daily journal page, which is this big page right here, then the ledger card right here, number 3, and a carbonized receipt so that the financial records for each patient visit are completed by writing a single entry. Entries for additional records such as daily totals and monthly summaries must be completed manually, and those are here down in A and B. A charge slip is also known as a super bill and is used to transmit financial information between the treatment area and the business office. The daily journal records all transactions for the patients seen each day. The receipt or walkout statement are given to the patient showing their current balance. Giving the patient a receipt or walkout statement speeds payments and reduces the number of statements that must be prepared and mailed. You must record all payments promptly. As a safeguard, all checks should be stamped immediately with a restrictive endorsement. This endorsement prevents anyone from cashing a stolen check. In a manual system, patient account records are maintained on account ledger cards. In a computerized system, these are organized as account histories or ledgers. These records are used to track all patient account transactions with balances maintained at all times. This information is used to generate statements, insurance claims, and other collection efforts. Under payment at the time of treatment policy, patients are asked to make payment in full for treatment provided at each visit. When you are accepting payment in cash for services, it is essential to ensure that the office has correct change available for the patient. Credit and transactions are listed as payments, but the posting code is different from that used for cash or a check. A new means of payment, referred to as the digital wallet, is taking the place of checks and credit cards. This allows an individual to make a payment using an app that is downloaded on his or her smartphone to make an electronic transaction. A practice may offer a discount if payment is made in full before the beginning of planned treatment. For example, if a patient is having a complete upper and lower denture fabricated at a cost of $1,400, the dentist might extend a 5% discount or $70 for payment in full. This is known as a professional courtesy. At the end of each day, the total for receipts must match the amount of money received. This practice is the daily proof of posting. If the numbers do not match, the mistake can be caught early rather than further down the road. The total receipts collected should equal the payments in the cash drawer minus the change fund. Bank deposits should be made once daily. A bank deposit slip must be filled out. The bank deposit slip contains an itemized listing of the cash and checks taken to the bank to be credited to the practice's account. The slip must bear the practice name, address, and account number. The slip also must be legible. All of the cash is listed together up here in the currency and coin, and checks are listed together, each one individually. You can see them listed here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. The business assistant will also be responsible for sending out a monthly statement requesting payment for the balance due on the account. The patient is expected to pay the balance in full on receipt. There may be times when the business assistant must make an effort to collect overdue balances. The accounts receivable report shows how much of the balance is current. The non-current portion of the balance is categorized by age, generally 0 to 30 days, 31 to 60 days, 61 to 90 days, and 91 plus days. All collection efforts must be handled tactfully and in keeping with the dentist's wishes and policies, because the dentist is ultimately responsible for the actions of his or her employees. Because you might be involved in collecting past due accounts, you need to understand the Fair Debt Collection Practice Act. This act makes it illegal to telephone the debtor at inconvenient hours, threaten violence or use obscene language, use false pretenses to get information, or to contact the debtor's employer except to verify employment or residence. When making collection calls, make sure that you have all the necessary information on hand before making the call. Speak only to the person responsible for the account. Regardless of what the debtor says or does, do not become argumentative or defensive. Try to be understanding but firm, and never permit yourself to be insulting. Note any agreement made over the telephone on the patient's account ledger. Collection letters. Let's talk about those. These letters should be firm, positive, and businesslike. They also should be persuasive and help the patient pay the debt. And they also should be written so as to allow the patient to avoid embarrassment. The final decision regarding turning accounts over for collection must be made by the dentist. An account is never turned over without the dentist's specific approval. Some statistics show that in-house debt collection efforts are only 70% effective on invoices more than 90 days for past due. So the timetable for collecting should be 30 days, send out a statement including financial arrangements. At 60 days, send a second statement accompanied by a kind printed collection message or a telephone call. And at 75 days, make another telephone call and send a nice collection letter. Accounts payable is the money that is owed by the practice. It is the expenses and disbursements. Expenses are the overhead, and disbursements are the payments made on the money owed. Let's talk about two terms. Dental office overhead. First, there is fixed overhead. Fixed overhead are business expenses that continue all the time. So this is going to be your rent, your mortgage, utilities, insurance, salaries. Those are expenses you're going to have each and every month. Variable overhead are expenses that you don't have all the time, such as dental and business supplies, independent contractor fees, laboratory fees, equipment repair fees. Gross income is the total of all income received in the practice. Gross income minus practice-related expenses yields the dentist's net income from the practice. Unless the dentist earns an adequate net income, he or she will not be able to afford to maintain the practice. Okay, let's talk about disbursements. Some terms that you need to know. First is the packing slip. This is an itemized listing of the goods shipped and recipient of this shipment. This is going to come when you get your supplies. An invoice. The invoice details all of the goods shipped and the services rendered. This is the itemized bill. And then another term is the statement, which is a summary of all charges and all payments and credits and debits for that month. Accounts payable is routinely done monthly. The business assistant checks all invoices from suppliers to make sure that they match the statement. Then the check is written to pay the bill. The dentist is responsible for reviewing and approving the bill after the check is written, but before it is sent to the payee. Some accounts might be COD, which means that payment is due at the time of delivery. Petty cash is for small expenses or supplying patients with change. The amount in petty cash should be large enough to last a week, but not large enough to invite theft. Let's talk about some check terminology. First, let's define a check. A check is a draft or an order on a specific bank account for payment. Then there's the payee. This is the person named on the check as the intended recipient. Next term is maker. This is the one from whose account the amount of the check will be drawn. This is typically the dentist. The check register. It's a record of all checks issued and deposited into the account. All checks should include a date, number of the check, payee name, and the amount and purpose of the check. The stated amount should agree on the check register in numbers next to the dollar sign and written out in words before dollars. Before a check can be cashed, it must be endorsed. An endorsement is made on the back side of the check and must match the name shown on the face of the check. A restrictive endorsement, remember I mentioned that earlier, allows the check to be deposited only to the account of the named individual. You can use a rubber stamp with the appropriate restrictive phrase and the payee's name in place of the payee's signature. This endorsement should be placed on the check as soon as it is received. Let's talk about non-sufficient funds. Non-sufficient funds is when a check is returned to you marked NSF because there wasn't enough money in the account to cover the check. When the check is returned, you'll need to charge that amount back against the patient's account. Usually a phone call to the patient will resolve the problem and you can redeposit the check. It is important to have complete and accurate employee records. Employees want to be paid and they want to be paid on time. There should be a separate payroll sheet for each employee. This sheet should include the employee's full name, their social security number, their address, and the number of exemptions claimed. Each employee must complete an employee's withholding exemption or W-4 form at the following times: at the beginning of employment, within 10 days of any change of status such as a marriage, or before December 1 of the following year. The employee must pay the employee's FICA contribution, which is Social Security, The employer also must pay payroll taxes such as workers' compensation, federal unemployment taxes, and state unemployment insurance. Let's talk about dental insurance. The traditional dental insurance plan is considered fee-for-service and comes with limitations and co-payment options. The total dollar amount of coverage one of these policies provides is typically limited by its deductible and maximum benefits. There are managed care insurance plans and government program plans. Capitation plans, also called dental HMOs, involve an arrangement in which the dentist or the dental office, several dentist office, or a network of dentists contract to provide dental services for the plan's members. Preferred provider organizations, or PPOs, are technically a closed panel type of the capitation plan. This is a variation of a fee-for-service practice. Exclusive provider organizations are similar to PPOs, but patients must receive their treatment from a dentist who is in the plan's network of providers. A direct disbursement plan is a self-funded program in which the individual is reimbursed by his or her employer on the basis of a percentage of dollars spent for dental care provided. Individual practice associations are an organization formed by a group of dentists or dental societies who enter into contracts to provide dental services to enrolled populations. Government programs include Medicare, Medicaid, and the Affordable Care Act. Dental benefits are one of the most sought-after employee benefits. So let's look at the terms most commonly used for dental insurance. First, there's the patient or subscriber. This is the person who carries the plan. So it's the one who the insurance is in their name. Then there's the dependent, and this would be the subscriber's spouse or a child. Another term is group. This can be the union or employment organization that has negotiated the dental insurance as part of its benefit package. The carrier is the insurance company. They're the ones that pay the claims and collect the premiums. And then lastly, the provider. This is the dentist who renders treatment to the patient. There are three terms that you need to know when talking about insurance: usual, customary, and reasonable fees. These are the three most commonly used methods of calculating fee-for-service benefits. What is a usual fee? This is the fee that the dentist charges for any given service, like a filling or a crown or an extraction. A customary fee is a fee within the range of fees charged for the same service by dentists with similar training and experience that live in the same geographic area. For example, endodontists who are in Tarrant County may charge a range of fees that endodontists in the same county charge. A reasonable fee is any fee that's justified by special circumstances necessitating extensive or complex treatment. All three important terms to know and remember. Let's talk about how benefits are calculated. A schedule of benefits is not related in any way to the dentist's actual fee schedule. It is a list of fixed specified amounts that the carrier will pay towards the cost of covered services. The patient is responsible for the difference between what the dentist charges and what the carrier will pay. A fixed fee schedule is an established fee for any treatment received by the patient, and the dentist must accept the amount paid by the carrier. Under government programs such as Medicaid, the dentist must accept the amount paid by the carrier as payment in full and may not bill the patient for the difference. Determining eligibility. Before a patient is seen, it is important to determine their eligibility for insurance benefits. Some things to be aware of. There may be a 30 to 60-day waiting period before coverage becomes effective. Also, if the subscriber changes jobs or is laid off or retires, his or her coverage is customarily terminated within 30 days of the change. However, COBRA, which is the Consolidated Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act, entitles a subscriber to continue the same coverage, but they are responsible for paying the premiums. There are some things you need to be aware of when determining benefits. First, limitations. And let's talk about the least expensive alternative treatment. The least expensive alternative treatment usually comes into play when there is more than one treatment option for a specific condition. For example, a patient needs a restoration back in the second molar, in one of their second molars. They want a composite. And it can be treated by filling it with a composite or an amalgam. Insurance, because it's in the back, says, oh, you don't need to have an aesthetically pleasing restoration. Amalgam is cheaper and it's just as effective, so that's what we're going to pay. So in this case, the doctor would have to say, well, we need to go with the least expensive alternative treatment unless you want to pay the difference for the more expensive treatment. There's also dual coverage, and this is where perhaps a husband or a wife both have insurance. And you'll have to determine which insurance is the primary and which insurance is the secondary. And a lot of times they use the birthday rule. And the birthday rule states that the insured person whose birthday falls earliest in the year is the primary, and the secondary is the insured that's later, whose birthday is later in the year. For example, let's say a husband and wife both have insurance, and her birthday is January 31st and his is March 10th. Her insurance would be considered the primary, and his insurance would be considered the secondary. There's also coordination of benefits that you have to consider, and this says that you can't have the total received may not be more than 100% of the actual dental expense. And then another thing is non-duplication of benefits. This is limited to the higher level allowed by the two plans rather than a total of 100% of the charges. So let's look at an example of coordination of benefits. You have a patient, Brent Crosby. His primary insurance is Blue Cross and Blue Shield. His secondary insurance is GEHA Dental. He needs a Class 3 mesial composite restoration on tooth number 6. The cost of that treatment is $200. Blue Cross and Blue Shield will pay $125 for the treatment. GEHA Dental will pay $175 for the treatment. What does Blue Cross Blue Shield pay? They will pay $125. What does GEHA pay? GEHA is going to pay $75. for a total of $200 because they will not pay for more than 100% of the cost of treatment. Let's look at an example of the non-duplication of benefits. Again, Brent Crosby's your patient. He has Blue Cross Blue Shield and GEHA Dental. His treatment, he needs a restoration on tooth number 6, and the cost of the treatment is $200. Blue Cross will pay $125, GEHA $175. So what does Blue Cross Blue Shield pay? They pay $125. What does GEHA pay? They're going to pay $50 for a total of $175 because they will only pay up to the highest amount allowed by either of the two insurance carriers. Okay, so let's talk about dental procedure codes. We have seen those in some of the Dentrix modules that we looked at. These codes are divided into categories for service. Remember, there was diagnostic, preventive, restorative, endodontic. So those are the categories. This nomenclature was developed by the American Dental Association, and it was used to help speed and simplify the reporting of dental procedures to insurance companies. Okay, the dental procedure codes are used to provide current dental terminology, and the ADAA will update these codes periodically. Remember, these codes are very specific, like, an amalgam 1 surface, an amalgam 2 surface. So each of those has their own code and is very specific. Also, each procedure has a designated code number. So no procedure has that same number. Okay, let's talk about insurance claims and how to prepare these insurance claims. There are two two ways that a claim can be filed by the dental staff. You can either file it on a claim form and mail it to the carrier, or you can do it electronically. And in that case, the information is submitted electronically directly to the carrier. Both types have to have the same 3 primary areas of information. This includes the patient and subscriber identification. Oftentimes that subscriber identification number is their social security number. The dentist will have an identification number, and then details concerning the treatment provided. Let's talk about the dental claim forms. The ADAA provides a standardized claim form that most carriers will accept. When should you use a dental insurance claim form? A lot of times to submit a predetermination of benefits. What is a predetermination of benefits? It's used to request information about benefits for a planned treatment that has not yet been performed. Wanting to find out, how much is the insurance company going to pay for that. The completed form, you need to have 2 copies, 1 copy to submit to the carrier and the other to keep in your office records. The claim form includes 2 boxes for patient signatures. These relate to the release of information to the insurance carrier and the assignment of benefits. Let's talk about release of information box. The release of information box allows you to send information regarding the patient's dental treatment to the insurance carrier. The assignment of benefits box, this is an authorization to make payments of allowable benefits directly to the dentist. This says that the insurance company can send the money directly to you rather than to the patient. Electronic claims lower the cost of processing claims. Most dental practices have some sort of software that allows them to generate and submit claims from the practice to the carrier. The advantages of this are that it's faster, the speed of the claims submission, you get it in there, then you receive payment quicker. It reduces paperwork, and then there are fewer errors. Let's talk about claims form processing. Some things to consider. You might have to file a predetermination for a planned treatment. So, before you do the treatment, make sure the insurance is going to pay something on it. You want to make sure that you enter all the charges into the patient's account or their ledger. You want to make sure you submit the claim to the insurance company, and then make financial arrangements with the payment to pay his or her portion of the fee. Insurance claims are a form of accounts receivable. So you need to develop a system to track claims in process so that you ensure that revenue is not lost. For example, you want to look for claims that have been submitted for predetermination, but that you haven't received anything back from the carrier. Another thing you need to look for is claims that have been submitted but have not been paid. You also need to look to make sure that you've submitted the claim. And then claims that are returned for any reason and have not yet been resubmitted. You need to track all of those things in order to make sure that you receive timely payment. Payment from insurance carriers. Oftentimes you will receive a check, and it should be accompanied by an explanation of benefits, which tells you what has been paid and what has been denied. This explanation of benefits, or EOB, it's going to break down how the payment was determined. So it gives you, a lot of information. It also will tell you, what the patient owes. So you're going to have to notify them what the insurance carrier has paid and what their final responsibility is. Refunds should be issued to the patient for the amount of an overpayment. There are 3 ways to do this. First, you can credit the check to the patient's account. You can write a check to the patient for the refund, or you can put a credit entry on their account ledger. Let's talk for a moment about insurance fraud. You cannot escape liability by pleading ignorance. Therefore, it's necessary for you to understand what constitutes fraud. To commit fraud is to lie to or deceive someone for unlawful gain. Some examples of dental insurance fraud are billing for services not provided, changing fees on a claim form to obtain a higher payment, or to disregard a co-payment or deductible, or accepting only the insurance payment and writing off the deductible. All of these are examples of insurance fraud, and you do not want to be involved in this. Okay, so if you have any questions, please contact me via email or during my office hours on Monday from 3 to 4 p.m.